What is going on? I want to welcome you from Half Court for today, Wednesday, November 15th, 2023. I'm one of your hosts, Sean Murphy, alongside the man, the myth, the legend, the Italian stallion, Jeff I Afraid. He's back in the building, ladies and gentlemen. Jeff, you're not dead. You're alive. It's so good to see you. You made it through the depths of hell.
Yep. Well, you still see the piano, but I had to pawn that to get these wisdom teeth done. So I'm back. I'm feeling great. I'm ready to talk some Pistons basketball. Although it's been a little depressing, 8 straight losses. But you know what? We'll dive into it. I'm excited.
Oh, believe me, Jeff. I think we might talk about that. I think that might come up. But also joining us is that Marquette Heat, joining us from that beautiful seat. The man, the myth, the legend, Troy Sergey. Troy, you got to spend this time last week, you sent a text to the group chat. You're like, boys, Victor Wembanyama is right around the corner.
Yeah,
I can get tickets pretty much for $10. I understand if I can't, but can I please? And I'm like, dude, absolutely. So Troy, I need to know, now that you've seen Victor Wembanyama in person, what was the experience like?
yeah, a lot taller than I expected, I guess, before the game
Taller than you expected? He's 7'5".
That's even crazier. Honestly,
let's just say 7'5" in person is a lot different than on TV. I'll just say that.
Yeah.
It was a great experience. Before the game, the Pacers have a area where you can, go a little bit closer to see, the warm-ups, and he was warming up, and that's when I was like, wow.
That had to have been surreal.
Yeah, a lot of international fans in the attendance in Indy for the game. A lot of people flew across the world just because I think it's the cheapest market for tickets in the NBA, and they wanted to see Vic. So that's my assumption. I'm just assuming there, Sean. But it was cool to see just how many people flew across the world to see Victor Wembanyama. I mean, he is kind of the story of worldwide basketball right now. I think us NBA fans are so excited of what the potential can be with this guy. And, I'm just excited to see what the future holds with him as well. Because, again, we haven't seen a prospect like him since LeBron James. And he played well against the Pacers. Tyrese Halliburton, though, got the dub. Yes, I appreciate taking the week off to go see Vic in person for a once-in-a-lifetime rookie experience.
I feel like Vic as a rookie might be the hottest ticket since the Kevin Durant Golden State Warriors, the first year that whole team was together.
Right. Yeah.
And it almost feels like not just the in-season tournament, but the presence of Victor Wembanyama seems to have elevated the regular season in and of itself, just because of, all the fascinating young players there are to watch right now. And I mean, Troy, not to, we're going to talk about the Pacers a little bit later, but I mean, right now, first in offensive rating in the history of the league and 27th in defense.
Yeah, that's insane. But they know how to put the ball in the basket, but they kind of struggle with defending. So.
That is putting it kindly. But speaking of a team that struggles to do both of those things, we'll talk about the Detroit Pistons here in a second, because this is From Half Court. Each and every week we talk all things Detroit basketball, the good, the bad, the ugly, and the If you like that, be sure you like this video, smash that subscribe button, hit that mother notification bell so you don't miss any of the content coming your way. But also, be sure you follow my guys on social media so you don't miss any of the things they have going on. You can follow my boy Jeff on X at Jeff I Afraid. You can follow my boy Troy on X at Troy Sergey 44. And guys, people can find me on
X
at Sean Halfcourt. Doesn't that feel good, Jeff? That X.
Yeah, you got me doing it on the show now. Like if I say, I'll just like you too. I'll be like, so and so on X, and then I'll continue. So, inspired by you, Sean. Inspired by you.
You know what? If I could make any impact on Detroit sports media, I will take the fact that it will start with X.
Yeah.
But guys, we've danced around it for a bit now. I think it's time we address it. I know there's probably people that are specifically tuning into this podcast to hear us have to talk about the fact that the Pistons are on an 8-game winning streak because this podcast was confident in the fact that this team was ready to turn a corner this season, and especially felt like they were looking like they were beginning to turn a corner after the first few games. After starting the season at 2-1, the Detroit Pistons have lost 8 straight games to find themselves now at 2-9 at the lone spot as the worst team in the NBA once again. And when you look statistically at this team, they're middle of the pack in just about every single category. I mean, this team's 20th in offensive rating. So for all the talk about how bad this team is offensively and how, we'd be doing better if this team went all in offensively. First of all, what players on this team that's currently healthy would drastically change this team's offensive rating from what it is right now? And second off, like, how is that going to help us in the long term? But that's a whole other different conversation. That's just a dumb narrative from a microcosm of Pistons Twitter. Defensive rating, we're currently 22nd. Net rating, 22nd. But overall, guys, you can probably guess where we're really bad and what is really killing us, and that is turnovers. Specifically, the Pistons are currently 29th in the league in turnovers, and we are 30th in the league in most points off of turnovers. Guys, we are currently giving up 22.2 points per game off of turnovers. I mean, I get that, like, obviously we look at injuries. We look at, we look at who's isn't available in this lineup. We look at, the youth, and, we can look at a myriad of different things, like I know, by the way, I think now that we have Monty Williams in Detroit, we can stop blaming the coaching first and foremost. It has to start with us, right? And specifically, I do think that changes need to be made. But first, I mean, this team just needs to start taking care of the little things. They need to stop shooting themselves in the foot, and that's what's going to get them back in these games. I mean, Jeff, I want to start with you. What have been some of your takeaways from the beginning of the season? Where are you at right now on the panic meter? And what would you like to see change even in the interim? Because, I know whenever things like this start happening, people want, demand for sweeping change. But I think that a lot of, in my opinion, I think subtle changes can instantly improve this team right now.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Now, we agree everything can't be instant oatmeal, but I don't think any Pistons fans asking for instant oatmeal. They knew this thing would be a long grind, Sean. But to your point earlier about what they're not doing well, and if you watch these games, a lot of the time it's closing these games. I mean, you go through from quarter 1 to quarter 2 to quarter 3 to the fourth quarter. Right now, we'll just talk about what they do defensively. They're 10th in opponent first quarter points, so they're 10th. Second quarter, they're 19th. Okay, so you're talking about right before halftime. They get worse. Third quarter, they're 22nd. And then, of course, in the fourth quarter, they're 22nd. So from the first quarter off the jump, this team, they play well in the beginning, but they're not finding ways to close games. And whether that's youth, whether that's execution, whether that's, personnel who's on the floor, that's to be debated. But I think the majority of it, when you watch team, Sean, especially with the injuries. I mean, you already have Monty out. You got Joe out now, and he'll be back in not too long. Alec Burks just came back, but still he was missing for
he missed 6 games.
And then you had Bogey, who we have not seen at all. So you have 4 guys that are 40% 3-point shooters. And not only that, guys, they're veterans, and they're missing those
all
pieces.
Of them.
So when you have a Jared Rhoden, who, actually isn't that bad, but Jared Rhoden out there, you have guys that you're calling up from the G League. And on top of that, you have James Wiseman playing. And guys, James Wiseman, I think that experiment's, we know it's over at this point. So you lose veterans, you lose shooting, and you bring up more, you bring up more youth. There's a problem there. So taking care of the ball, that's something, that we've talked about too. They're 29th, like you said, in turnovers. So they're not great there. There's a lot of little things they're not doing right, Sean. And I know people last year they'd bring up Dwayne Casey. You're not doing that. It's not Monty Williams. I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to hit the panic button. This is a long season. Although if you take the 2 wins and you add up on 82 games, they're only on pace for 20 wins. But we believe that at some point, I think it'll be post All-Star break when everyone's healthy, when these guys have started to really gel. You'll start to see more of those wins, and maybe after the All-Star break, they'll be more around 500. I think they could still hit 25-30 wins, Sean. Maybe I'm crazy, but I'm not going to hit the panic button yet. But the start isn't ideal. You lose 8 straight. Yeah. And a lot of those games they led, Sean, in the fourth quarter. Yeah, it's frustrating. There's no denying that.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, there are multiple games. I would say that just about every game in this 8-game winning streak, save 1 or 2, there were moments where they were either in the driver's seat or in position to get into the driver's seat. And just about every single game, it started to fall apart, not because of what the other team was doing, but rather because of the mistakes that we were making on our side of the ball. And Troy, obviously, you look at the, I know that, whenever we're in this type of situation, people look for people to blame, right? Like whenever as a sports fan, I know that the first instinct when we're angry is what do we channel this anger to? Who do we blame? And, I think there's, a mixture of a lot of different things that are affecting this team this season. I think it would be naive to not, acknowledge the health issues and things that, that are, facing this team. But I also think it would be fair to say, I was saying this before the pod, I think the first legitimate criticism you can make of Troy Weaver's tenure is the fact that he's not quite put Cade in the best position to succeed thus far into his career. And listen, all the people that are hammering Cade right now, I agree the turnovers need to be better, but I mean, when I think I saw another NBA insider compare the Detroit spacing to the NBA equivalent of a closet. And when you look at the situation that he's in, I mean, a lot of times when he's like driving to the paint and he drives he has the second highest rate of driving in the entire league. So many times he's just driving into this wall of collapsed players because all 5 players are in the lane because they don't trust anyone on Detroit to shoot. When Isaiah Stewart is our best floor spacer.
Yep.
Although that's a good thing Isaiah Stewart's developing, it's a problem that Isaiah Stewart is our best floor spacer.
Yeah. You guys both touched on a lot of good things. And I think, I just want to say too, as a Pistons fan who had high expectation and still to a degree, like Jeff, still in that 25-30 game window. I'm not losing hope there. I think where our hearts are hurt by this is that we know the talent, right? We know the potential is there. We know we have guys who know how to play basketball. We've seen flashes of greatness from Cade. We've seen what Ivy is capable. We've seen awesome flashes from Jalen Duren. But like you said, Sean, we got to get him on the court all at the same time. We know that Bojan is a certified scorer. We know Alec Burks is a certified scorer. Heck, we just brought back Kevin Knox, and he's getting buckets. But my point is we have talent on this team with Cade, with Asar, with Ivy, with Duren. I mean, the list will
Monty
go
Morris, Bojan, Isaiah Livers, Joe Harris, Alec Burks, everyone who was on the sideline.
Right. And to have 2 Monty Williams and, looking at the contract that we gave him, to coach this team and knowing what he did with Phoenix, everything on paper is like, all right, this is our year. This is our year. This is our year. But we know that basketball isn't always played on paper. We know that there's injuries. We know that they're still getting used to this new system and adjustment. We also know the league is deep. We know that there is talent, and we've hung in there with the Bucks. We've hung in there with the Suns. We had a fourth quarter lead against the Trailblazers. We're up by double digits against the Sixers and the Bulls too. I mean, all the losses we've had, minus maybe 1 or 2, were very winnable games this year.
Yep.
And I think I know you don't want to hear it, Pistons fans, but to me, that gives me more optimism than pessimism. So, but at the same time, I want to validate. Yes, this hurts. Yes, it sucks. Yes, I'm just as mad as you are. But you gotta be patient with the rebuild, the restoration. You gotta trust Troy Weaver. You gotta trust Monty Williams.
But I do think to what you mentioned earlier, Sean, about the point about the spacing, that's a problem. Like that starting lineup, and you nailed it with the Isaiah Stewart thing, because it's not to take anything away from him. I think actually his development hasn't been talked about enough. I think he's been playing really well this year.
He's been absolutely stellar.
He has, but Asar is already in the rookie of the year race, and he's not the greatest floor spacer yet. He's
more offensive boards as of the other day, more offensive boards than Victor and Chet combined.
Yes, he's doing a lot of things well, but the floor spacing, I mean, there has to be a change, and I think we all know the change, and it has nothing to do with, how I'm not going to say how they've been playing bad, but Killian Hayes, there has to be something in the starting lineup that changes. Either you insert an Alec Burks, or you eventually, like everybody wants, you insert Ivy at some point. But he is being challenged by Monty, and we'll see how he responds. But there has to be a change at some point, Sean. There has to be something, because you look around, I mean, even in a situation that's different, but Tyrese Halliburton in Indiana, look at the shooting around him. Look at everybody on that court with him can hit a three. Obi Toppin's okay, but everyone else can space. Benedict Matherin's been a decent shooter, but he's coming along lately. You have guys all around him. Miles Turner can hit a three, step out, hit a three. They have guys that Bruce Brown can hit a three. Like you need, especially for a guy like that, like Cade, who can get 7, 8, 9, 10 assists a night. You need more spacing in that starting unit. All the spacing, especially with all the guys out, the injuries, it's been a problem. It really has.
Yeah, 100%. And, listen, I fully believe guys like Monte Morris, are going to come in and make a big impact right away, especially when it comes to taking care of the ball, especially when it comes to turnovers, with spacing, like just about like everything that we need, from an injury standpoint or from like a roster standpoint is currently, on the bench. And I think, when you're missing all of this spacing and then you miss Jalen Duren on top of that with the ankle injuries, I think that's just I think that's just a insult to injury type of injury where, like, listen, this team was already struggling as it is, but, then to lose, your defensive backbone, the guy who, was anchoring the physicality that they were showing to start the season, and so like, I think, even though like he's been in the lineup like the last few games, like he clearly hasn't been 100% in like a little over a week. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't take it. Like Stevie Wonder could see he wasn't 100%. So,
Ivy being sick too, Ivy being out with that,
which by the way, can we talk about how many legitimate like content creators or like legitimate people in this space were just going deep down the conspiracy theory rabbit hole? Now, I'd be lying if there weren't points in that week where I didn't go, okay, what's going on? But ultimately, I waited for the information because turns out Jaden Ivey's too talented of a player to trade 2 weeks into a season over a couple of good Marcus Sasser games. And also just because Monty Williams didn't like someone in Phoenix doesn't mean he's automatically not going to like someone in Detroit
who plays a different position and a totally different character and yada, yada, yada. List is endless of how they're different.
Now, I still would love to see Jaden Ivey more involved in the lineup. I would still love to see him more in the rotation. I think there's a lot of things that he brings to the table that could actually, that could drastically improve this team when he's healthy and at his best. But that's the thing. I don't even know how long this, it sounds like this has apparently been going on since the team was in New Orleans. But I mean, from the sounds of it, I mean, Jaden Ivey was saying, after practice today that like he couldn't even, like he could hardly even get out of bed. Like he couldn't even watch TV without being in pain. When you're a professional athlete and you're feeling that way, you have to be pretty sick. And on top of that, when you're that injured already, the last thing you need is someone with a viral infection around the team dwindling down your health report even more.
Yeah, the man's 21 years old and he's in prime shape. If he's that,
but hey,
sick,
good job getting your impressions, though, guys.
Yeah, well, that was funny. That's why I don't even
good impressions.
I don't even chime in on Pistons Twitter with that stuff because it is a little ridiculous. Like some of the conspiracy theories, like why? I mean, like the Pistons would actually make up something to keep this man out, or he's that frustrated where he would make up something to stay out of games. That is ridiculous. But they have missed him. I'll tell you that. Him coming off the bench, they had definitely missed him. And a positive part of that, and I'll let Troy speak on Jaden Ivey. I don't want to change the conversation, but Marcus Sasser, he's a stud. He's a stud. I mean, you can make a case right now he should start next to Cade, and I would listen because of his prowess, his shot creation ability, and his shooting. Which I don't think we'll keep. What does he shoot, like 50% from three? I think that'll dip a little bit, but he's been incredible. Just want to throw that out there. But the Ivy stuff is BS.
You know where I'm at with this Pistons team? I feel exactly how I felt last season when the Lions started 1-6, where it was like, I don't exactly know what's going on. I don't know why, we keep losing these close competitive games. We clearly have the talent. We clearly have, everything in house to take the next step. I still believe in what's going on here, but it's for whatever reason, it just hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
And then obviously, Jeff, we all know what happens after that 1-6 start. We end the season 9-7. We go to Green Bay. You get the awesome win to end the year. You see what's happened this season. I think there's still a legitimate path for this Pistons season to feel a lot like that. And the luxury for the Pistons, unlike the Lions, is they have 71 games to turn it around instead of 11. Right? Like we still have, a long runway to make a jump and make improvements. And again, the change doesn't have to be something drastic. You kind of alluded to it a little bit of a minute ago about how, this team does, might need to consider making a lineup change. And I think there's merit to it because, just the spacing has not been there. And whether it's Marcus Sasser, which I know a lot of people want it to be him. I personally think Alec Burks makes a ton of sense. And then you can bring in, Killian to run that, to run that offense alongside Ivy, get some action for Ivy out the ball. But, like for me, it has to be something because, even though there's a lot of things to like with how they've played, that there's nothing with this team that is good enough or set in stone enough to not tinker and experiment with. And I definitely think once you've reached the 8-game losing streak mark, I think it's about time we start tinkering around with the lineups a little bit at the very least. And I do think that a trade of some form is, it is very potential down the line because guys, I almost think, and I saw people, on Pistons Twitter. I know, I know we're just looking at, I know we're looking at prospects just to have a conversation. I personally don't want to have a conversation about the draft in November. That's just not where I'm at. But even then, realistically, I do not think that anyone in this draft class is good enough to, not that I think we're even trying to position ourselves for the draft this year. I guess what I'm saying is that if there is a year to trade our first round pick and instead try to go use that to get some veteran talent in the league, because even though this team needs more talent, I don't think what this team needs is more young talent. I think we need some adults in the room. And that's the biggest thing this team's missing on and off the court.
And there's so many guys, Sean, in this league who have that exact fit, right? I mean, there's so many guys who are talented players in the 25 to 29 age group, which I think would kind of be the demographic we're trying to reach, of guys who can get buckets, guys who have done it 4, 6, or 7 seasons now. And I just think there's a lot of potential there. You're right, Sean. And I would rather, like you, I would rather look to guys who have proven themselves in the league than watch another 18-year-old come in and, have his adjustments. So
yeah, I mean, dudes change teams in this league like seasons. Like there's someone to be someone that's going to ask out, and I don't think a draft pick. who you're going to have to wait on. And that's the difference between the NFL and the NBA. You're going to have to wait a year or so on, unless he's Victor Wembanyama or he's one of these incredible prospects. But you wait a couple years on a guy. The Pistons don't have time to do that. Yep. And I don't think they have the time to let him develop either. So, you're in a position where kind of where the Cleveland Cavaliers were pre-Donovan Mitchell, where you have a young core, what you have. Like you have 6, 7 guys you like, and then you go add a dude, whether, in the Cavaliers felt like it was a guard. Maybe it's a different position for the Pistons, but that's
maybe
where they're at, John. Absolutely. Go get a wing. I don't know who that is, but trade deadline, I think it'll start to heat up. They got some pieces and they have draft capital. So I wouldn't count Troy out. That's kind of the last thing he hasn't done yet, which I think he will do, which is make a big time trade. And he's waiting. He's probably, this is still the feeling out process. Like Troy said earlier, these guys are still learning the system. Like this is the first year in Monty's system. You remember the first year in Phoenix, they won 19 games, and the following year they won 30 something games. Like it takes a year to get through this thing. And I think they're in the process of that. So I think a trade is inevitable. I do.
Yeah. And listen, if this team was going to struggle at any time of the season, it's not a shock at all that it's at the beginning of the season. And I mean, you look at all the other teams that were drafting in the top 5. I mean, the Spurs, I know Vic's been the big story of the season, but the Spurs are 3-7. The Trailblazers, who got Scoot, are 3-6. The Hornets, who got Brandon Miller, are at 3-6. The only team that drafted in the top 5 that made a drastic jump, and we'll talk about them and give them their roses in a minute, is the Houston Rockets. But even then, they're not there because of the contributions they're getting from Amen Thompson. In fact, I'm not even sure how much Amen Thompson's playing. So the reality of it is it's not like it's extremely shocking. I think all things considered, we thought the Pistons would still be around the play-in spot or somewhere towards the bottom of the Eastern Conference standings. But I mean, the reality of it is, I still think there's too much talent in-house to be losing as much as they have been. But ultimately, that's why I think it is going to turn around, because I think there is the right talent and the right people in place. Now,
yes.
Now obviously, if things only get worse and just go downhill as the season goes on, we're having a different conversation. I think it can only go up from here, because it can't get much worse than losing 8 games in a row. And on top of that, with the Cavalry, it's not like we're far away from getting a lot of these guys back. Realistically, we're probably within a week or 2 of getting either Bojan, Monte. I saw Monte Morris is doing 3-on-3 work in practice right now. He's inching closer and closer to getting back on the court. So the Cavalry, the help is right around the corner. It's just, I also think there's things that we can be doing to put ourselves in a better position to succeed. And I mean, the other thing as well, Cade's not going to have many games like he had against Chicago. And, ultimately, I believe that the partnership between him and Monte Morris is going to, and between him and Monty Williams is going to be what's most beneficial, out of this whole thing. I think this will only strengthen Cade and make him better.
Mm-hmm. And I've seen things on Twitter, and this is what I find pretty funny, is even at 2-9, people already talking about firing Troy Weaver, which is, it's an annual thing, guys. We go through this about 10 games in.
Again, people just want to blame somebody.
And they can't blame the coach, so they immediately go to Troy Weaver. And I said this on my show, and I don't know if I was crazy for saying this, but I think Troy Weaver, post 2000, he's the best talent evaluator you've ever had, and from a draft perspective. That's what I believe. You look at the talent he's found on this team so far, and that's not saying much if you're a Pistons fan. You know how the drafts have went, but regardless, Cade, Ivy, Asar, Marcus Sasser, Isaiah Stewart, Jalen Duren, the collection of Killian Hayes. I know he's a 7th overall draft pick, but he's decent. The collection of talent they have, Troy's already checked that box. So anybody that wants to bring up draft picks are just arguing in a cave just to hear themselves. That's all they're doing. Now, if you want to bring up what he can do via trade and free agency with all this money available, to me, that's the next step for Troy Weaver. That's the box he has to check, and he hasn't been able to do it yet. But for people that are complaining about Troy Weaver, guys, I just find it comical. And at this point, it's Troy, it's Cade's a bust, it's this, it's Monty's dumb for not starting Ivy. It's all this BS, man, all over.
And when you talk about like with a general manager and a salary cap, I would rather a general manager be not aggressive enough than too aggressive when it comes to our salary cap, because especially with where we're at as a team, we've been able to finally see some healthy Cade Cunningham, but otherwise, there's still a lot of unknown with this roster. Like the last thing that we needed to do was make, any crazy long-term commitments. You know what I mean? And I think between the salary cap space that we're going to have after this season, the amount of expiring contracts that we have, in my opinion, I know a lot of people are looking at, oh, well, we better do something in free agency. I think we're positioned to do something anytime, anytime up to the trade deadline through this offseason. I think they're in a position to make some improvements. And again, I don't think that they're in a position where they're just going to go, oh, well, we might as well position for the draft. Oh, darn, because this isn't a Victor Wembanyama, Amen and a Sartan. This isn't that draft class at all. Right. So,
yeah, no more top 5 picks, please.
No,
please be traded.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I do ultimately, I think we all believe that this team will still turn the corner. I think we all believe that this team will still have a better win total than last season, but I think we all can agree that things need to start changing and quickly.
Yep. You summed it up in one sentence, Sean.
Yep. And again, I get it's been rough to watch. I get it hasn't been fun, but at the same light, I don't think getting angry, calling for people's jobs, going at people personally. I don't think anything of that sort is going to make this season magically turn around. So I just don't think it's productive. Maybe
I don't want
me.
And and it's not just you, because I agree. I don't want people to think that you're not allowed to say anything and you're not allowed to complain. You could be upset, and that's fine, especially if you had expectations. Lindsey Hunter, and I poke fun at him because he said they could make the playoffs even without any significant additions. This was in the offseason. They haven't had any significant additions. And how's it working out, Lindsey? All right, that prediction was a little, but regardless, people who have that type of prediction, it's okay to be frustrated. It's okay. But the part I think you guys would agree, and where we don't agree, is when, okay, I'm frustrated through 11 games, fire this guy, this guy's a bust. The overreaction. Trying not to see the big picture. You have to try and see the big picture. This is what this is about. This is what all Pistons fans signed up for. Fortunately or unfortunately, if it wasn't your expectation. But we knew. Now, did we know they'd be 2-9? No. But we knew, hey, this thing there's going to be a figuring out process for these guys. This is going to be a kind of a team you have to measure through all 82. This isn't a team that right off the bat, they're going to be 500 and float right around 500 the whole season. We knew there'd be peaks and valleys. But that's the difference in perspective, to be honest.
Getting to 30 wins still means losing 52 times.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We knew the math. We understood that losing was very much going to be part of this process. I just think none of us expected that it was going to be an 8-game losing streak. And I definitely don't think any of us anticipated some of those losses looking akin to last year if Cade Cunningham was going to be on the court.
Exactly.
And I think the biggest thing is just ultimately, for whatever reason, ever since we've just had this combination of players together, we just haven't been able to see them all on the court together. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? That's just been the most frustrating thing. And listen, you're never going to get perfect health. We never said that that's going to happen. But again, something does, something's got to give at some point. If I could summarize it down to anything at all. Now, guys, throughout the rest of the league, we might as well just talk about them since we mentioned them a minute ago. The Houston Rockets are on what I believe is a 6-game winning streak. Ime Udoka right now is at the top of the list of everyone's coach of the year conversations. It's kind of like that, man, look at how good Ime Udoka is, but also don't talk about why Ime Udoka is the coach of the Houston Rockets and not the Boston Celtics. Let's not talk about that. You know what I mean? But right. I mean, if there's two things that I think we can pull from the Houston Rockets and how well they've played so far, it's number one, the Dillon Brooks slander was way dramatically overdone in the playoffs. I mean, he's clearly been extremely valuable.
That'd be me.
Or yeah. Hey, I'm also partially guilty. I am also partially guilty, but Dillon Brooks has been a very good addition for them as far as a mentality aspect goes. Offensively, he's actually been playing pretty well for them. He's actually shooting the basketball pretty well. But I think on top of that, I think when you look at the talent and the pieces that they have in Houston, we've talked a bit, about Jalen Green on this podcast, but I think the real star in Houston, in my opinion, is Alperen Sengun. And, you look at the way that he's been playing, not just offensively, but defensively, he looks a lot better this year as well. I mean, guys, like honestly, Alperen Sengun's looking like a mini Jokic, but kind of like what they were hoping he would be in Houston. They just beat Denver the other night. Guys, I think Houston might be for real. Like I'm not saying they're going to be a playoff team. I think they could be. I think that they're probably in the play-in sphere in the West, but overall, I mean, like credit where's credit's due, man. Houston's taking the jump.
Yeah, we knew Ime could coach. I mean, we knew he could coach. So him coaching really well isn't surprising, Sean, but when you get a guy like Ime, especially where the Houston Rockets are at, they're ready to spend money. I mean, they're third and fourth scorers right now. Their third and fourth leading scorers are free agency additions. Mm-hmm. You brought up Dillon Brooks, Fred VanVleet, who got paid a short-term bag, but still a lot of money, $40 million. He's been their third leading scorer. And then you talk about the veterans they have, a Jeff Green, to kind of mentor Jabari Smith Jr. Like they have a good mix. And then Jalen Green over the last couple of games has been just unbelievable. So he's been playing really well. And then you mentioned Sengun, who's been their best player. He's like the way he plays, I'm not trying to say it, but he's got a little bit of that Jokic play style. I mean, he's averaging about 19, 7 and whatever, 7 and 7. He's a big man who can also make others better. So I like Houston. And I know that there was a funny beef, Pistons fans and Rockets fans, but overall they got something going on in Houston. They're all in, not all in completely, but they spent money and it's working out for them. It really is.
Yeah, absolutely. And like they, obviously they've been dealing with injuries a little bit themselves. Like Amen Thompson has missed some time with some ankle injuries. He had that brutal ankle sprain like a week or two ago that just looked absolutely freaking gnarly. So hopefully he can get back onto the court at some point as well. But I mean, I think you said it pretty well. I mean, they got, they went and got some, some true veterans, some adults that could be on the court, like Fred VanVleet isn't, a world, like a world stopper as a basketball player, but as an adult and, as someone to have run your offense, like he's a stable presence for them to have on the court. But, I think on top of that, like Troy, I think them having that continuity and having, having those guys, healthy and ready. But on top of that, the additions that they made, I just think, I think Houston is looking how we were hoping Detroit would look. But again, a lot of that can be credited to, they did decide to spend a lot of their free salary cap space. Well, now it's paying off for them in the short term. We'll see if this pays off for them in the long term, because, it's not like they're going to have a whole ton of money to play with going forward. But Troy, I mean, so far, we got to give Houston credit where credit's due, right?
Yeah, definitely. They definitely got guys on the team that can play. I mean, I guess the big guy would be Fred VanVleet, but as you mentioned earlier too, Sean, how they constructed that, how they paid those guys. We talked about this on a previous podcast. How they gave the bag to a guy like Dillon Brooks. Did he deserve all that? And how
he's earning it so far.
It seemed like they threw all of their eggs in one basket to a point where they have no future besides right here, right now. And maybe that was the point. Maybe they believed in the roster they were constructing, and I guess, who's to say it's not working out right now? But I still don't think this is an 82 game roster that can win games to get you to a Western Conference Finals.
I don't think anyone's saying Western Conference Finals, Troy. I don't think anyone's saying that.
I would say even the second round, I think, would be a stretch.
Well, I mean, I don't think anyone's even having that conversation at all. I think we're saying this team could make the play-in.
Yeah.
Which would be the next step in a good direction for them.
That's that inner Pistons fan, like, damn, they're gonna make the playoffs this year, aren't they? Those sons.
I think that might be more where I'm getting at. Of like, I watch the team and I'm trying to not jump the gun, but also I want to make sure I don't jump the gun with saying second round at Western.
I don't think anyone was talking about that.
Watch them do it now. Damn it.
Yeah,
damn
right.
It,
I spoke that into existence, Sean. So keep laughing.
I'm like,
it's gonna happen.
Conference Finals, the what?
Yeah.
He made Doka Coach of the Year.
But it's surprising.
Coach of the millennium.
Segun is the guy leading that charge. Segun's the guy. But I just don't think this is sustainable for 82 games.
Yeah, no, like they're definitely it's definitely. I don't think it's definitely going to look like this all 82 games. They're certainly, certainly they're not going to be able to beat teams like Denver every single night, but they definitely have a lot more life than they had, say, a year ago, even. And they are, to their credit, they're one of the 5 teams in the league that's both top 10 in offense and in defense. And that's perhaps like what's the most impressive about what they've done so far. To Troy's point, I do not think that is sustainable because they are somehow 9th in offensive rating, yet 20th in points per game. Make that make sense.
Yeah. I will give them this though. That is insane. I will give them this though. No, quickly go.
I was really quick to say, do you really think they're gonna be 3rd in opposing points per game all year? I don't think so.
No, I do not think so. And that was one of those games a little skewed because they played the Lakers, no Anthony Davis, and that game was disgusting. But regardless, this team, you watch them just from a coaching perspective, they look so much better. And this isn't even like a diss to Steven Silas. Like I think he's still a great coach. But there's level like the way if you watch the Rockets, you're like, yeah, this is different. And of course, the players got better and they're a year older, but. Man, yeah, the way they're playing, they're playing the right way. And of course, you add some veterans in there. Like I got to give them some respect there. So.
Yeah, I think Fred VanVleet. I know the first couple of games didn't look great, but I think his presence has really been felt. Thus far in Houston. I mean, just how important it is to have an adult on the court alongside those guys that can set the table, and that's why I think a guy like Monte Morris is going to be so important coming back into the lineup. That's why I think having guys like Bogey back and even just seeing like when one night of Alec Burks in the lineup again, it's like, oh, thank goodness. Like you can just see, how important it is to have adults, in the room and on the court that can take care of a lot of those things. And honestly, I think having, again, I know it's difficult to give Dylan Brooks his flowers, especially after, just how much of an ass he made himself look to be, in those playoffs last year. But there is really something to be said about having a veteran like Dylan Brooks that you can reliably put on the other team's best player and know that they're mostly going to keep them in check. And if anything, are going to free up the other players to not have to worry about that. Like the Pistons that for Detroit, our best defensive stopper guys is a rookie. They have a all defensive, one of the best defensive players in the league. So like when we talk about, like why they're in the position that they're in and like the steps that they're making, it makes a lot of sense when you look at what roster they've had on paper versus what Detroit's had on the court. But at the same time, you do have to give them their flowers, man. I mean, they're looking really good. And, I'm happy for the fans of Houston because, I mean, especially the way it ended with James Harden, essentially just straight up just quitting on the team and going to Vegas for training camp and effectively showing up in a fat suit, like it was, and I mean, not even to get into all the stuff they dealt with the Texans. I mean, like Houston deserves it. But, in the same light, Troy's point, I don't know if it's going to look like this all season, but I mean, at this pace, they're setting themselves up pretty well to be in a play-in spot. Can we agree on that?
Yep.
Setting themselves up well is what I would agree with. I would not bet money that they're going to make the play-in, if that's what.
Neither would I. But right now, they're looking like they could that they could head that direction. Now, guys, a team that I did not see us saying this at this point of the year, let alone at any point of this year. But guys, I think we're at the point where we have to say it. I think the Minnesota Timberwolves are legitimate contenders. They're at 7-2. Anthony Edwards is averaging 28 points a game. I'm not sure if you've seen any of his action yet thus far this season, but 2 games in particular that were just downright impressive. First of all, his game the other night against the Golden State Warriors, where he just systematically picked them apart. 33 points, 7 assists, 2 steals, 6 boards, and wasn't even particularly shooting well that game for his standards. And then you look at all of his other performances of late. The game that was most impressive to me was his game against the Boston Celtics, because not only was Ant getting it done on the offensive end, but he flipped a switch and guarded Jason Tatum down the stretch and got the big stop to win the game for them as well. Rudy Gobert is also actually looking pretty good again, and actually looking like the anchor that they went and paid for. And they're doing all of this with Karl Anthony Towns not really playing that well. And guys, there's been a lot of chatter, and I was listening to the Hoop Collective podcast the other day, and they were having a conversation about a scout told Tim McMahon that there's a lot of similarities in Anthony Edwards' game to Michael Jordan. And I know that sounds like hyperbole, and it's like, whoa. Whenever you make that type of comparison, it sounds crazy. But if you look at what Ant can do as a scorer and the type of stretches he can go on, how dominant he is on that side of the ball, but on top of that, how dominant he can be on the defensive side of the ball. I can't believe I'm saying this, guys. Minnesota's for real.
And it's only because of Ant-Man. Let's just say that. I mean, Cat and Rudy, whatever, they'll get their own. But Ant-Man is the one leading this charge. And if you've not seen how well he's playing this year, you're not paying attention, right? And I think, he's the catalyst. Would I could use the name Michael Jordan as the first comparison? Probably not, even in his younger years. But at the same time, that assassin, he's becoming assassin. He's becoming an assassin on the offensive end. And it'd be very curious to see how this continues to the regular season, because of course that will set up the positioning for the playoffs. Are they going to be a 5th seed? Are they going to be an 8th seed? Could they even get a 4th seed? It'll be really, really interesting to see.
Yeah, Sean, if you told me through 9 games that the Timberwolves that we talked a lot about last year, more so made fun of them.
We made fun of the Rockets and the Timberwolves, and we have to spend this pod giving flowers to the Rockets and Timberwolves.
If you would have told me, Sean, that they'd have a win over the Golden State Warriors, the Boston Celtics, and the Denver Nuggets so far this season, I would say you're crazy. But they have those. So credit to the Timberwolves. Credit to Chris Finch too. I was out on him as a head coach. He's doing a pretty good job. And Ant-Man too, to Troy's point. But you kind of know that, Sean, already. They got a good collection. They got good guys that know the role. Cat is, still a guy that I think is an expendable asset. But Ant-Man is for real. He's probably
Jaden McDaniels, by the way.
They extended. Nice piece.
The defensive juggernaut he is. They just have so much length on the all over the court.
I think Anthony Edwards he's going to be an MVP candidate. Like, he'll be in that conversation till the end of the season, and I could see him winning the thing. So, because he's already an incredible 2-way player, and he's going to be the biggest reason where Anthony Edwards goes is where the Timberwolves go, and that's an MVP candidate to me, truly.
Yeah, without a doubt. And and if you're a Timberwolves fan, you got to feel pretty good about, where this team is long term, because even though they have a lot of, like with the Rudy Gobert trade, with the Karl Anthony Towns contract about to kick in next year, they have a lot of financial hardships and a lot of things that they're going to have to figure out over the next few years. But I mean, man, as long as they have Anthony Edwards in the lineup, it doesn't matter. They're going to have a chance. They're like, and especially, the thing I look forward to the most is if we see this Anthony Edwards in the playoffs, because I mean, guys, last year, this was already a really competitive series between Denver and Minnesota in the playoffs. Like Denver even said as much after the postseason that the Minnesota Timberwolves were their most difficult series. I think we are legitimately setting up for if those two teams face in the playoffs, I think that could be one of the greatest playoff series in NBA history.
Yeah.
And I don't say that lightly. Like when you look at if you were to make a fantasy boxing matchup, this is like the Floyd Mayweather Manny Pacquiao of basketball. When you talk about like how styles make fights, this would make for a juggernaut fight.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and when you talk about Anthony, just real quick on Anthony Edwards too, like I just wanted a quick check from when he first got in the league. You know what's incredible? He's been in the league for 4 years, and every single year he's increased in points per game, he's increased in rebounds, he's increased in assists, he's increased his field goal percentage, and he would have increased his 3-point percentage every single year, but he's 0.8 below what he shot last year.
Wasn't he primarily a football player growing up?
Yes, and that's what people actually tried hating on him for. Does he love the game? No, yeah, guys, he loves the game. He's gotten better every single year in multiple categories. He's not even done. We don't even know if we've seen anywhere close to the best of Anthony Edwards. That's incredible.
Terrifying, dude. 22 years old.
Oh my
gosh. 22. This guy, and that's where the MJ stuff comes in, man, because this guy's insanely young. Like the runway for this guy is so long. Like he could be doing this he could legitimately be playing for 18 more years.
Yep. With modern medicine.
And who knows where medicine's going to be in 10 years? He could be playing until he's 50 for all we know, doing windmills. You know what I'm saying? Like who knows? Maybe we'll get Karl Malone at 90 going out there getting boards again, with the way modern medicine is. But in all seriousness, like he's been, I think we all kind of thought that he could be one of the breakout stars of the league this year. I thought he would have done it around the All-Star break. I didn't expect it to be like the first week. This guy's special. And you know what, man, we talk about how Detroit deserves a winner and how they've been through a lot. Minnesota has been through hell. And so for them to get a guy like Ant playing the way he is and to have him locked down for the long term, I'm just happy for Minnesota fans, man. I really am. As much of a hard time as people give them. They deserve the fun that they're enduring right now.
Mm-hmm. They got a franchise player in Minnesota. That's all they need. That's all they needed.
Yep.
That's all they needed.
Now, guys, we've been too positive for a bit now. We've been giving teams too many flowers. I think to wrap up this pod, I think we need to be a little negative. So my question is, because we got to talk, there's a couple teams we got to talk about. My question is, which one do you want to talk about first? You want to talk about the Memphis Grizzlies or the Washington Wizards? I will give you guys the choice.
Talk about the Wizards. Let's be a little more nice.
A little more nice. Okay.
Yeah,
and that's saying
I'm only
something.
saying that because of their record.
Yeah, 100%. The Washington Wizards are currently 2-7. They have lost 6 of their last 7. And I'm not sure how much you guys have been paying attention to the Wizards and how their season's going, but this was personally my favorite thing I saw. Like if you need a summary of how this season's going, Jordan Poole's just straight up not even paying attention. Like coach is coming in, Jordan's just having a conversation off to the side. Teammates are noticing, people are trying to get him in. He's like, man, this is my team. I got it. I'm good. Throws his towel, swearing, and then finally locks in at the very end, but missed the play. Has to like come back around, try to see if he can figure it out.
Sean, I cannot believe and
how transparent that is.
No,
it like that in
but
4K.
This is a man they gave 4 for 132.
I mean, I know this is the low-hanging fruit. I know this is what everyone's thinking. No wonder Draymond punched him. If this is the guy that he is in the locker room each every day, no wonder he was the one that got punched in the face, yet is the one that everyone's like acting like it's kumbaya ever since he's gone. Because apparently, if that's what he does to your organization, if that's the effect he has in your locker room, I mean, clearly he needs some humble pie. I mean, listen, I think the Wizards, if they had played more games than us, would have a worse record than us right now. But nonetheless, we're the ones with the worst record, so here we are. But having said that, Troy, if you watch the Washington Wizards, I do not think it is much of a debate about who looks like the worst team in basketball, because they surely make it an effort to look that way. And as I say that, they're up by 7. Troy, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, but we predicted that going in, right? I mean, we knew they were in total rebuild. And, I guess I at least was a little more, maybe not optimistic, but I was really excited for Jordan Poole just because I felt like he would have the green light. And to a degree, he kind of does. But, I think he is the type of player who would be a better role on, and not necessarily Golden State. We kind of knew, he was kind of gone. But I feel like he's more of a guy who you would want on a competitive team than kind of building your franchise around, even if it's in tank mode, still kind of having the guy with the green light. I don't know. I would trust him more with a role piece than the green light all the time. I just feel like that's who Jordan Poole better is than this. So
yeah, and by the way, their top 10 draft pick, Johnny Davis, he's a bust. So there's that too. At this point in time, he's a bust. I mean, he's getting DMPs every game.
I knew that from the Taco Bell commercial from last year, but I mean, even
there's a lot of things going on in Washington. There's a lot of different storylines. If you work in Washington media, I mean, there's probably a lot of other things you're more concerned about. But if you're talking Wizards basketball, my gosh, Kyle Kuzma's been the only thing great out of that city right now. Kyle Kuzma's been really good this year. But other than that,
and even then, goodness. I just feel for Kyle Kuzma because I'm like, dude, you could have been on a competitive team.
I know.
You know what I mean? And it's just like there's a lot of players, up and down this roster. It's like, wait, you're like, I kind of like you. Like, why are you here? You know what I mean? Like freaking Daniil Gallinari, for goodness sakes, is in this rotation. Poor guy after tearing his ACL before getting to play with the Celtics has to be on the Wizards. I mean, yeesh. I mean, and granted, this team's in year 1 of the rebuild. They're finally heading down the right path. So they are bad by design. So it's not like any of this is surprising. But I saw that video come across my timeline earlier today. We had to watch it on the pod. I just couldn't believe my eyes. Like just like buckle up, Washington. That's all I have to say, because they're in the midst of an absolute dumpster fire. Speaking of dumpster fires, the Memphis Grizzlies, no John Morant, no anything, apparently, because they are currently 2-8. And granted, they somehow managed to beat the James Harden Clippers, which, I mean, that's a whole other abomination that we don't even have a whole lot of time to get into. That, I want to see that bake a little bit more, but talk about ugly. My God. But guys, by the time John Morant comes around, is there even going to be a season to save?
I don't think so. But by the whole thing, I remember the last couple of years, it's been what the record is without John Morant. Guys, this is a star-driven league. Like, there's going to be time. They need John Morant. Desmond Bane's been really good. He's playing like an all-star. I mean, hell, he's playing the best ball of his career. And Jaren Jackson's been solid, but yeah, they need John Morant bad for this team to be competitive. I mean, besides Jaren Jackson Jr. and Desmond Bane, they got okay pieces, but man, they lack. This isn't that Grizzlies team from 2 years ago where like they're 7 deep. Like this is not that team.
No.
They don't have the depth. They need Ja back soon.
Yeah. And yeah, I'm happy with Bane's play. He's definitely one of my top maybe 15 favorite players in the league to watch on a night-to-night basis. I really like how he's able to score. But yes, I mean, obviously you would expect him to kind of take the role with Ja out. But I love how, I mean, I guess, I don't know if I would identify as a Ja fan, but I am a greatness fan, right? And Ja has greatness to him. So I want the Grizzlies to be in a position to win and to play in for a play-in or playoff spot. I mean, heck, they were a 2nd seed 2 years ago, like you said, Jeff. So yeah, I want them to succeed and to at least be in a place where they can compete, but nothing has shown me that this season yet.
And I mean, listen, Ja can come back and play, play some of the best basketball of his career. That still doesn't take away, like from some of the holes that they already kind of have, up and down this roster. This doesn't quite look as deep of a roster as it looked a couple of years ago. And I mean, even if you bring back John Morant, who's filling the Dylan Brooks role? Marcus Smart's a guard. He's 6'3". He's not that ball stopping wing, like Desmond Bane's 6'5". So, and on top of that, like as great of a position as Memphis looked even a year ago to like be ruling the West for years to come, the emergence of Anthony Edwards is making that look more in doubt. The presence of Victor Wembanyama is making that look in doubt. This Denver team and how good they're looking and how good they can be for years to come is very much making that look in doubt. I mean, guys, this is a Grizzlies team that cannot afford to be wasting seasons, and it feels like we're watching them do it in front of our eyes. Yeah. And for Ja, I hope that we don't have to have another conversation about him and guns or whatever BS he was getting involved with, because I think the next time we will be the last time that we will. But like I do think that if this isn't the wake up call that he needs, that something has to change, then nothing ever will be, because he's getting shown right in front of his face. This is why you need to change, because you are the reason this is happening. You are the person that could be preventing this.
Yeah. Right. And I mean, the record is showing that. Their play is showing that. And I know they wanted to get a guy like even D Rose to kind of just be in that locker room guy.
Yeah.
Marcus Smart, obviously, bring him in for a similar role, but also on the defensive end, you want him to play well. And yeah, you're missing something big, and that big thing is Ja. So
yep. Yeah. And it's not because of injury; it's because of stuff that he very much can and very much can and has to control.
Absolutely.
But guys, I mean, just to tell you, just like how much interesting stuff's going on in the NBA right now. Like, we're at the end of the podcast, and like we couldn't even touch on the Zion stuff that's going on. We couldn't even touch on the James Harden saga and everything that's going on with the Clippers. We're not even able to talk about Sacramento and what's going on over there. Like how up and down they've looked from the beginning. I mean, this whole season, this season as a whole, in my opinion, has just been tremendous. We haven't even been able to talk about Tyrese Maxey and how awesome the 76ers have looked. I mean, guys, from top to bottom, the league's in a better position it's ever been in. And I mean, it just tells you like the fact that the Pistons have that much talent and are in the position that they're in, because the whole league has a ton of talent, man. It's about putting things together and doing those intangible things to win games. But mark my words, man, in the coming weeks, we'll be having some good things to say about the Pistons too. But for right now, be sure you're watching not just Pistons basketball, because the league as a whole has some great hoops to watch. If you haven't been to a Motor City Cruise game, now's a great time to do so. I got to see Jared Rhoden drop 36 points in person the other day. That's a really fun experience to be able to go to in Detroit. So if you haven't been to a game like that yet, go check it out. But also be sure you're checking out what my guys are up to as well. Be sure you're following my guy Jeff on social media at Jeff Iafrady. Also check him out Monday through Friday on the Morning Woodward Show. But also be sure you're following my boy Troy at Troy Sergey 44. Boys, it's so good to be back with you both. My heart feels whole again. My boys are back. But gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. People at home, thank you so much for tuning in and making From Half Court a part of your routine each and every week when we talk about all things Detroit basketball, all things NBA basketball. Thank you for listening. We'll catch you guys next time from Half Court. Be sure you're subscribed